That is SB 694 by Senator Archuleta, that is presented by Assemblymember Schiavo. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 694 by Senator Archuleta and others, enacting unfair business practices.
Assemblymember Schiavo, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As chair of the Assembly Military and Veteran Affairs Committee, I rise as a proud principal co-author of SB 694 by author Senator Archuleta, who is chair of the Senate Military and Veteran Affairs Committee. This bill provides consumer protections for our disabled veterans and puts federal law that is made by these, that has made these predatory practices illegal into state law by, number one, prohibiting unaccredited companies from charging fees for VA claims. Again, this is already illegal based on federal law. Number two, it defines veteran benefit assistance as protected public service under California's consumer protection laws. And number three, it empowers the Attorney General, who strongly supports the bill, to investigate and prosecute violators. As of spring 2024, there have been 58 cease and desist letters sent by the VA to these for-profit claim predators nationally. Letters they have just ignored because there's no enforcement of these laws. And that's what we need to change in California. Veteran John Ryan's experience is an example of why. Mr. Ryan is a Kern County resident, retired Marine, who believed that the benefits he earned would be there when he needed them. Last year, while seeking help on a disability claim, he was contacted by a company promising quick results and expertise with VA disabilities claims. What they didn't say is that their business was an unaccredited business and that their business model was dependent on charging veterans often thousands of dollars for their services that should be and are free through a county veteran service officer. The company pitched itself as an expert with insider knowledge of the VA system, which is categorically false. They rushed him through paperwork and spoke as if they were working directly with the VA, which also they're not able to do. Immediately after receiving a decision from the VA, the company sent him a bill totaling 6 months of his VA benefits. It demanded that he paid those 6 months of benefits in 3 months or incur interest charges. Hidden in the contract terms, they even gave him a claim on future benefits, meaning that if he got an increase on benefits in the future, even if he didn't go through the claim shark, they would get a percentage of those future benefits. For a disabled veteran living on $1,600 a month, that unexpected bill meant draining his savings completely. So let's be clear, the actions of these predators who are taking advantage of our veterans are illegal and have zero oversight for their aggressive sales tactics, false promises, and deceiving contracts that sign away veterans' rights and financial stability. They're operating illegal businesses under federal law and without needed enforcement and closing current loopholes in the law. Predatory corporations will continue to take advantage of disabled veterans, making billions of dollars nationally off of our VA disability system. This is the #1 issue for all of the congressionally chartered veteran organizations in California, including the American Legion, VFW, AMVETS, Disabled Veterans, National Vets, COBSA, Vietnam Veterans of America. It's supported by unions like IBEW 1245. As I mentioned, the Attorney General is supporting this. And we also heard from our congressional leader who's been working on this nationally, Congressmember Mark Takano, who is the former chair of Veteran Affairs, who is fighting to strengthen these protections federally and needs our help. Permission to read, Madam Speaker?
Without objection.
Congressmember Takano reached out this morning and said, quote, California has an opportunity to lead the nation where DC politics has let veterans down. Passing SB 694 will ensure our veterans are protected from unaccredited, unregulated entities that seek to profit off their hard-earned benefits. And with that, I respectfully request an aye vote.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Sharp-Collins, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me be clear. I'm a strong supporter of veterans, 100%. And I would like to thank those of you on this floor who have served. Thank you so much for your service. And those of you who are watching as well, thank you so much for your service. But we all want to live in a world where VSOs are operational and accessible. We also all want the VA to be timely and equitable. That world, however, is not the one that we are faced with right now. The VA is literally impending litigations against Black veterans who are alleging decades of discrimination with respect to their benefits. While some county VSOs are operational, many are not. Instead, they're sending veterans to untrained volunteers to have their claims processed. Further, VSOs are facing major backlogs in California and often are requiring veterans to wait years to receive their benefits. So additionally, Black veterans have the highest denial rates, meaning even after years of waiting due to the backlog, they are still not receiving the benefits. So what do we do? Let me be clear. I do not like the idea of companies charging fees for anything that's otherwise free services. I do not like the idea. But I simply cannot stand idly by while Black veterans in my district tell me that this is their only option. This is something that works for them, rather than them continue to have the unequal and unfair treatment by their county services. In an ideal world, county services are fully funded, and there is no need for these companies at all. But it is not our budget reality, and California cannot fix the federal VA. So the next option is to regulate these companies. And there are amendments that would actually allow this bill to do so, but those amendments were actually rejected. So once again, on that note, let me be clear. My vote today is not in support of these companies at all, because as I stated, I'm not okay with these fees being charged. What I am doing is putting the idea of choice first. Veterans should have a choice. I cannot condemn Black veterans to the separate but equal treatment from the VSO system. This is a system that needs to be corrected. When we always want to talk about equity, what is true equity? True equity is acknowledging that one-size-fits-all approaches do not work, and we know that. We have a collection of bad options right now, but this bill once again shoehorns Black people into a system that continuously is failing them. History is littered with examples of this, and this bill offers opportunities to continue this flawed way of thinking. So we need to slow down a little bit here. Bring together stakeholders and work on California solutions that work across all of our counties. Y'all know I'm in San Diego. So it should not be the case that veterans in Salona County have better outcomes with free services than veterans in San Diego County, which is our largest military outpost. Some people probably want to know, well, why is she so into this? Yeah, I am a former spouse of a veteran. I have my family members. There are other personal connections if you want to talk about things getting personal. But when we talk all the time on this floor about trying to get the policy right, then let's do that and try to get the policy right. That is not happening here, and there is no need to rush this process. Let's continue discussion and find a way to get to a full county funding without closing off avenues for some of our most vulnerable and marginalized veterans. Let's recognize the unique needs of Black and brown veterans and give these heroes the choice that they have rightfully earned when they put their lives on the line to serve this country. They should have a right to choose.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember DeMaio, you're recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate the intent behind this bill. The author is raising a frustrating issue of these predatory for-profit companies that are bilking our veterans for access to government benefits that they've earned. What's so frustrating about this is that the fraud, the shakedown, the price gouging is made possible because government doesn't do its job. Because the VA hasn't provided access to these benefits. And so veterans are desperate. And that puts them in a position, a vulnerable position, to be preyed on by these for-profit operators. I I understand that the senator is trying to address this by banning these unlicensed operators. So basically throwing the good out with the bad. I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned that the author has not been receptive to some common sense amendments to reform the system, to provide greater safeguards and oversight. The bill exempts a powerful special interest group, the trial attorneys. Lawyers are exempt from every single one of the provisions in this bill. So the lawyers can sit there and rack up hourly rates and turn around and get compensated. And I can tell you right now, I'm not so sure I would trust lawyers to be the best advocates for our veterans. But it brings me back to the issue here. It's outrageous that government has failed these veterans by not providing them with access to the benefits that they've rightfully earned. In San Diego County, our county supervisors fell all over themselves to put $6 million every 90 days on the table last year, for a total of over $20 million to help illegal immigrants get free taxpayer-funded navigators to work the system so that they could enroll in taxpayer-funded welfare programs. Now, I bring that up because many of you support similar programs. How about we take and defund all of those programs for non-citizens and instead make sure that in California, we will hire, if the VA can't do the job properly, in California, we will hire navigators at state government expense to make sure that these veterans can get the benefit that they have earned. What, cat got your tongue? Can't do that for veterans, but we will do that for non-citizens? Again, you want to solve the problem. It's not just saying, okay, let's ban these predators. I mean, you look at some of these companies, it's outrageous what they charge. What they do is they pay money to get at the top of the search engine, so when these poor vets are searching for help online, the free services are put on page 5, 6, or 7, and the predatory services are at the top. And we know that they've hired lobbyists here in Sacramento. They've got money to try to oppose common sense reforms. So, my colleagues, I think many of you want to help our veterans. There's an opportunity for us to do that. We've already shown that we're willing to throw a bunch of taxpayer money at hiring state navigators for undocumented illegal immigrants. How about we instead hire state navigators for the veterans if we're going to pass this bill? And I do believe that, pending input from other members, because I am kind of on the fence as to, do you throw out all of the organizations if the government's actually not providing access to benefits? I understand some of you are torn. There is a good argument on both sides. The bill is flawed, but perhaps it will force to the surface the problem that we're having with
30 seconds.
Veterans the benefits that they deserve.
Assemblymember Cork Silva, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise to support SB 694, which will help support veterans' benefits in our state. And I actually agree with my colleagues that have spoken before me, who have stated some opposition. One of the things that I've learned now in my 11th year as a state assembly member is legislation is imperfect, even at its best. And often we take a piece of legislation that gets passed and we need to come back and what I call put slivers of legislation in because it's not perfect. And as the member from San Diego stated, if this brings people to the table, we need that. We know that our county service veteran officers are available, but we also know that they're not easily accessible, that veterans need more. I served as the Veterans Chair in 2013, and some of these issues were brought forward almost a decade ago. One of the things that members don't know is that when veterans leave service, they have 26 steps to go through in order to attain their veterans benefits. Many of us would drop off ourselves to get these benefits at about the 10th step. It's why we see veterans not, number one, accessing their benefits, because it's such a lengthy process. We also know they go through orientations to leave service, but sometimes those orientations are in other states. And then they come to, in our case, California, and they're still trying to navigate. So the word navigator is a great word, and that's what our county veteran service officers are for, but sometimes they're not finding them or they're not accessing them. I like to think of this legislation as a student who gets a scholarship. And they get a $10,000 scholarship, and somebody comes in and says, hey, I will help you navigate this scholarship, but I'm going to take 20% of that scholarship. And somebody who's desperate might say, sure, that's worth it to me. But they're literally taking dollars out of veterans' pockets. And although I know this has been contentious, I know in committee it was a very difficult committee hearing. When we're here on the floor, this is messy. Sometimes there's scenarios that develop that make people very angry, and this is one of our, I would say, less fights on the floor, but there's going to be many more on the floor. We've already had some this year, but this bill is about veterans, and the simplest way to talk about it, it's about organizations taking money from veterans. Can we do a better job with our county service veterans officers? Yes. And we need to push our counties and those that interface with veterans groups to make sure they're out of their offices and they're accessing or they're available to veterans. There's a lot we need to do, but this is a step forward. And with that, veterans are asking us to stand with them, and I ask you to support SB 694.
Thank you, Assemblymember Wilson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of SB 694. First, I would like to say that I support the comments from my colleague from San Diego, who is a colleague on the Black Caucus, and support her comments, especially around the fact that we see that Black and brown people are less likely to have a positive outcome when navigating the claims benefit process. That is absolutely true. And at the same time, it's true that Black and brown folks are usually the most likely to be taken advantage of through this predatory process. But I rise today, and I wasn't planning on speaking, I rise today because I wanted to talk a bit about the comments from my colleague, the other colleague from San Diego, and make sure that this body understands what the process is like. I have experienced this process through my husband, who is a Black veteran who receives disability, and my son, who is also a Black veteran who receives disability, and how they navigated the system in Solano County, which, as my other colleague from San Diego noted, is one of the better places to receive services. But there are multiple ways for someone to be able to file a claim and do the appeal process, which is completely free. One of those ways is through the county VSO, which we're talking about today. Another way is through the VA accredited program, where those organizations receive training from the VA to be able to be a part of this process and access this process. And the other way is through an attorney. So someone can use their own attorney to do this, and that's why I think it's vital that we in California don't take away an option that the federal government allows an attorney to process this for them, that we don't take that away from veterans here in California. So I wanted to make that completely clear. And I also want us to know that there are things that we can do beyond this. to be able to support our veterans here in California. One of those is we already give an allocation to the counties to help fund the VSO program. We should increase that allocation as a state. Secondly, we can encourage additional participation of organizations across our state to get accredited by the VA so we can increase the opportunities for veterans to be able to get the benefits that they rightly deserve and have absolutely earned, especially in high veteran areas like the county of San Diego. And last but not least, I would like to just say one thing about the predatory practices. This has always been a problem. But a former President Biden signed the PAC Act, which increased benefits, increased eligibility. It increased the amounts that people can get, including for things that weren't previously covered, or you had to do lots of proving. So now cancer is automatic. It wasn't before. So you had this influx of new people coming to get these types of benefits and claim their benefits. And then we've seen the skyrocketing not only of the number of people who are being a predator towards our veterans, but also the amount that they're taking, because the amount is so much and it went back so far. So I strongly encourage support on SB 694, and I strongly encourage this body to take our veterans serious and ensure that next year we have additional bills on this subject that allows veterans in California to be first in line for their benefits, and that this state is supporting them to be first in line for their benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Tanguipo, you're recognized.
Thank you, and I rise and I love our veteran community. I've used multiple VSOs as a recipient of Chapter 35 benefits for my school, as a CalVet fee waiver recipient, but let us live in reality that this market only exists because of the state of affairs that some of our veteran offices are in. It's something that I've had to deal personally with the local Sacramento Veterans Affairs office, where our case was dropped. And when I reached out to the individual, they didn't even know who we were while we were waiting on spousal benefits for my mother to receive. The problem is we in the government have not taken care of the veterans as much as we could. Is we haven't given back the services, if we haven't hired more Veterans Affairs offices and helped them. So I'm not in opposition to this bill. I am simply asking for more time to go all the way upstream and fix the issue. I've lived through it personally. I had the option when our case was dropped to go to the Fresno County Veterans Affairs because I have such a good relationship with them. And you know how simple the fix was? They didn't even tell us that the address was wrong. And we had to wait 6 months while I took care of everything for my family, simply because the office didn't tell us that the address was wrong. I'm being asked to wait to support this bill because we'll fix it later. Well, why not fix it now and address the claim sharks later? Because if we do better with our Veterans Affairs offices, if we allocate the resources necessary, if we look at our county budgets in the future, they're not doing well. The top 10 counties across this state are in massive deficits. What is the track record and who gets services cut? A lot of the times it's our public libraries and it's the services to veterans. And if that's the future projection, these options right now are all we have for families starving. This market only exists because there's a different problem. I don't agree with the sharks. I don't agree with how some of them are predatory and how there's multiple cases. And I've spoken to my own personal Veterans Service office, and I said, you are great, you are amazing. Would you say that's the same standard across the board? Unequivocally, that was no. Because the resources are allocated different per county, the resources are allocated different per state, and the resources are allocated very differently. That's the upstream problem, and we need to handle that first, now, before taking on the problem that's created downstream. So I only respectfully ask that we work on this and dedicate some more time to make sure that families have all the options, because it's the difference of whether you have a home or not. It's the difference of whether your family can eat or not. It's the difference between whether your brothers are in school or not. Thank you.
Assemblymember Patterson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this measure after a lot of conflict in my mind on this. A lot of the supporters, and I happen to be in committee actually during this particular debate, even though I don't serve on the committee, but I had a bill up before the committee at that time. And so I listened to the entire, pretty much the whole debate. And I had also many of the supporters and sponsors of the bill are from my district, actually, in Placer County. And part of that's because, Placer County does a really great job at serving veterans, and we are fortunate to have that. And another reason why I'm leaning towards, or why I'm going to be supporting it, is I had the opportunity to visit a military base recently, and when you go in, as I'm sure many of you know, sort of in an official capacity, you get the protocol office, and they kind of help you and show you around and those kinds of things. Well, one of the individuals who gave me a tour was actually a civilian contractor who had been rehired, had just recently retired from the military. This individual, this lady, was under 40 years old. She had been rehired by the military to welcome people such as myself to the base through the protocol office. And she asked me if I knew of any jobs out there. And that was really frustrating to me. You have somebody who dedicated their career to serving this nation, and we have all sorts of issues with when you leave the military, what's next? I saw this with my own family. And so some of these individuals who are retiring from the military, they need the assistance of somebody. And that's why I think the conflict is there with this bill, is that they reach out to some of these groups asking for help. And what's really frustrating about this bill, if I can be honest with you, is we actually did have an opportunity to fix this bill. We had an opportunity, I think, to consider amendments, to add guardrails, to make sure that people who need the help can find somebody and, yes, maybe get compensated. And this isn't the only field in which this happens, by the way. And there are predators in every industry in which this occurs, but I feel bad that we're kind of limiting that option, the opportunity, and maybe there'll be regulations, maybe there'll be things, but we actually had the opportunity to fix this in this bill. And it's frustrating that we didn't. But that said, on the whole, I'm 100% against harms to our veteran community. And with the bill that's in front of us, I have to support the bill and make sure that our veterans are not taken advantage of. But I hope the author and others, and I know this is an important issue to the floor manager, that we address this expeditiously in the next year to make sure that people can get the help if they need. Because I don't want, again, to meet with an individual who just served our nation for 20 years and not even 40 years old and tell me that they have issues serving our nation. We could do better than that. And to my colleague from San Diego who is here in spirit, he did bring up a good point that we do make policy choices in this building about what we're going to fund and the kind of services that we're going to fund. We could fund this service for our veterans if we wanted to, and it's something that we should definitely think about that. For now, I ask for an aye vote on this bill.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Carrillo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of Senate Bill 694, which strengthens California's commitment to protecting veterans during the federal claim process. More importantly, it reaffirms our responsibility to ensure that veterans can successfully recover the full amount of benefits that they have earned through military service. Companies that have taken advantage of our veterans and exploit those who have honorably served our country should be held accountable. Unaccredited companies that have no formal training in the VA system and operate outside of federal law must be met with oversight and accountability. SB 694 stands for the principles that any business that provides assistance to veterans in filing a claim for VA benefits must adhere to the professional and ethical standards set by the VA. This common sense legislation is a simple way to help protect veterans and ensure that veterans receive the full amount of their rightfully earned benefits. I'm proud to stand with my colleague in fighting to protect our veterans, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Jeff Gonzalez, you're recognized.
Colleagues, SB 694 is before us today. Many of my colleagues in this body have asked for my opinion because I'm the only veteran in this body and because I'm 100% service-connected disabled with a combat-related service connection. Let me attempt to present this in a way that is honoring to both sides of this equation. Let me also be clear. This is not a partisan issue. This is not a partisan issue. This is only about the U.S. service member, the warrior that made a decision to defend our freedoms, and their ability to get their benefits and services that they desperately need. This bill has many in this body split. On one side, SB 694 would ban companies from charging veterans to assist them on retaining their benefits. Veterans would only be authorized to use the free services provided by accredited veteran services officers. This bill answers the problem of claim sharks taking advantage of veterans by charging them astronomical fees. On the other side, many oppose this bill because it removes the veteran's choice of choosing their own path to retain services. Some say that if they want to choose to get free services or paid services, it's their choice. They fought for it. I believe this body ultimately wants to protect our veterans. Moreover, both sides have presented compelling arguments on behalf of their respective groups. Furthermore, I have personally spoken to the author and both advocacy groups. I will be presenting a bill next year which will build a framework to regulate this industry. So as you consider your vote, I would ask you to think about this. If this bill passes, what unintended consequences does this have on the good actor businesses and the veterans which have paid a company? Do they lose their money? Are they stuck in the system? Are they in limbo? If this bill does not pass, what unintended consequences does this have on the veterans that are getting taken advantage of and the increase in bad actors? With that, there's much to consider. But more importantly, I respectfully ask, and this is my recommendation on this bill, I respectfully ask that you vote in favor of your district and your veterans.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Assemblymember Schiavo, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank my colleagues today for the healthy debate on this important issue that really impacts our veterans so deeply. As the daughter of a disabled veteran who relied on these benefits and who himself had frustrations with getting denied from the VA, I know that it's not a perfect system, and I look forward to a bipartisan and unified front to really fight for a VA that truly is equipped to serve our veterans fully. And likewise, to fully fund VSOs. I know that all county VSOs are not created equally, but I also know that these are veterans helping veterans, and they don't have an 8-minute limit to have a conversation on a phone with someone so they can move to the next person to try to make more money off that next veteran like the predators do. I know that our county VSOs are the ones who will have a long conversation about, do you also need housing assistance? Do you also need help with health care or mental health support? Because they're trained and they go through an accreditation process through the VA to look at the whole veteran. And so this, as my colleague from Susan City pointed out, there is an accreditation process now. You can go through the VA accreditation process. The attorneys that were mentioned have to go through the accreditation process. They are limited on what they can charge, and they cannot charge for initial claims. They can only do appeals on denials. So there are limits and guardrails that exist right now that these claim sharks are choosing not to go through because they know that they can get the biggest bang for their buck for initial claims. They try to push from going 0 to 100% so they can get a percentage of that and charge people up to $22,000, disabled veterans, out of their pockets. We have talked a lot this year about affordability. We have talked a lot about how we can keep money and put money back into Californians' pockets. I'll tell you what's not debatable is $22,000 kept in a veteran's pocket. That is real money and real impact on disabled veterans' lives that we need to make sure is protected. One of the, this has been a somewhat controversial issue in some corners of the floor here, and there's been a lot of conversations. And I really appreciate the bipartisan support here on the floor today. And consistently, my colleagues from across the aisle have been supportive in committees as well. I agree we got to do better with our CVSOs. We have to support them more. We need to make sure they're in all of our communities. I am happy to work with anyone on this floor who is struggling with that. My colleague, Senator Archuleta, opens up his office to a CVSO to be there in his office to make sure it's available to his community. I've fought to make sure that in my community of Santa Clarita, which is a veteran-rich community as well, that we have a CVSO there available. And I am happy to help anyone on this floor who needs that support as well. But one of the conversations that stays in my head as I have talked with folks on this floor is a veteran who has been a veteran advocate for a very long time, worked in this building for a very long time on veteran issues, and said they have never, ever seen an issue where it is so hard for veterans to be heard. And so I hope that you will join me today to make sure that veterans know they're being heard, and we are fighting for them, that we join in a national effort, that we are state number 10 to pass a law like this and make sure we are protecting veterans in our state, and that we continue to build upon this to make sure that veterans are supported and disabled veterans have the support that they need and they deserve for the service and sacrifice that they have made. So with that, I respectfully request an aye vote on SB 694. Thank you.
All debate having ceased, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 46, no 0. The measure passes. Item 57, SB 576 by Senator Umberg, presented by Assemblymember Lowenthal. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 576 by Senator Umberg and others, enacting the video streaming.
Assemblymember Lowenthal, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, SB 576, the COMM Act modernization bill, will improve consumer control and quality of life by preventing video streaming services that are serving consumers in California from transmitting commercial advertisement audio levels louder than the primary video content. Recently, several streaming services announced that consumers will no longer be able to opt out of commercials subjecting viewers to loud and disruptive ads. SB 576 helps maintain a comfortable listening level by adding volume control measures for commercial advertisements on video streaming services that serve consumers in California in order to protect individuals with hearing sensitivities, such as the elderly, children, and those with auditory processing disorders. The author has recently taken amendments to move opposition to neutral. The bill has no opposition, received bipartisan support. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 46, no 0. The measure passes. Item 109, SB 512, Senator Perez, presented by Assemblymember Wicks. The clerk will read.
Senate Bill 512 by Senator Perez and others, and relating to elections.
Assemblymember Wicks, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise to present SB 512 on behalf of Senator Perez, which clarifies and ensures voters in a transportation district can exercise their right to propose and pass a transportation transaction and use tax measure by means of a citizen's ballot initiative. Over the past 40 years, Proposition 218 has granted voters across 25 counties the ability to approve local sales tax to fund local and regionally significant transportation projects that have provided public and active transportation, interchanges, roadway improvements, and other essential transportation infrastructure. Although Proposition 218 acknowledges the power of the people to affect local taxes, California's elections code conflicts with that authority due to the lack of explicit authority to allow for residents of local transportation districts to propose and pass transportation transaction and use tax measures by means of a citizen's ballot initiative. SB 512 addresses the discrepancy that exists by aligning the state's election code and with the provisions of Proposition 218 and other authorizing statutes, bringing much needed consistency and clarity in California law. With that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
All debate having ceased, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Assemblymember Wicks moves the call. Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry, you are recognized.
At the request of the author, I request unanimous consent to return AB 220 Jackson and AB 563 Jackson to the Senate for further action.
Without objections, that shall be the order. Item 35, AB 876 by Assemblymember Flora. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 876 by Assemblymember Flora, enacting the Healing Arts.
Assemblymember Flora, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Assembly Bill 876 is back from the Senate with amendments. I respectfully ask for aye vote.
All debate having ceased, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 45, noes 1. Senate amendments are concurred in. Moving to supplemental file number 1, item 401 by Assemblymember Krell. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 416 by Assemblymember Krell and others, enacting the behavioral health.
Assemblymember Krell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is back on concurrence with technical amendments. This bill authorizes emergency room physicians to place patients experiencing behavioral health crises on 5150 holds. It enjoys bipartisan support, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 48, noes 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. Item 402, AB 455 by Assemblymember Ortega. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 455 by Assemblymember Ortega, enacting the real estate.
Assemblymember Ortega, you're recognized.
I rise to present AB 455, which is back on concurrence from the Senate. The Senate amendments are technical in nature. This bill has no registered opposition. I respectfully request an aye vote. On
All debate having ceased, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 53, noes 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. Item 403, AB 578 by Assemblymember Bauer-Cahan. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 578 by Assemblymember Bauer-Cahan, enacting the business practices.
Assemblymember Bauer-Cahan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 578 is back on concurrence. This bill protects consumers who order through delivery apps to ensure if they don't get their delivery, they are taken care of. All opposition was removed in the Senate. It has bipartisan support. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 43, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. Item 404, AB 593 by Assemblymember Wicks. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 593 by Assemblymember Wicks and applicant to Cal Fresh.
Assemblymember Wicks, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 593 is back on concurrence. Amendments taken in the Senate significantly scale back enhanced data sharing provisions to prevent personal information from being improperly shared or accessed for purposes other than increasing Cal Fresh enrollment. The bill has no opposition and has received no votes in committee. With respectfully ask for an aye vote.
All debate having ceased, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 55, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. Item 405, AB 712 by Assemblymember Wicks. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 712 by Assemblymember Wicks and applicant to Housing.
Assemblymember Wicks, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this bill is also back on concurrence. It would help ensure that our housing laws work by increasing penalties against public agencies that violate these laws. The bill has enjoyed broad bipartisan support and has no cost to the state. With that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debates, the clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 49, noes 2. Senate amendments are concurred in. We'll pass